Today's video is sponsored by Berry House Coffee Roasters. Use the link below or the discount code BHX Tedward25 for 25% off your order in December.
Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, we are driving a 1999 Mercedes-Benz RENNtech SLK. This is no ordinary SLK 230. This one has been beefed up and tuned by RENNtech. So a normal SLK 230, as evidenced by the name, would start with a 2.3-liter four-cylinder with a supercharger. This car has been punched up to a 2.5 liter. It's now got 260 horsepower, and because it's a 1999, it was available in a manual 5-speed, which this car has. In addition to the engine work and extra power, it has a limited slip differential. It's got Alcon brakes up front, Brembos in the rear, and those do some serious work. These incredible BBS wheels, and you'll also notice the stance of this SLK is outrageous because it's been lowered on H&R springs and it has Coney dampers. So that gives you the opportunity to adjust and upgrade as needed, because from 1999 you'd imagine things can get a little worn and torn, but this owner has done a great job of keeping it up to snuff. We've even got some new Michelin rubber on it. In 1999, when you'd send your SLK off to RENNtech, it would cost anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 on top of the donor car. So the owner of this car sent it right to RENNtech and doubled the price of his SLK, because the SLK 32 did not yet exist. And if you wanted to be the fastest guy on the block, the best handling Mercedes, and to compete with the Boxster and the Z3, this had to be done to one-up the neighbors. Now, this one has an interesting story. It's been around the block a little bit, but it does only have 60,000 miles. There's a few little scuffs and things on it, but not a huge deal. What's really cool about this is that the original owner sold it to the second owner during the New York City blackout. They actually got stuck in an elevator together for 8 hours, got to talking, found out they were both car guys, and made a deal. So the second owner of this car bought it in an elevator. So let's take a look under the hood. These cars always had a bit of a reputation for being a hairdresser's car. This wasn't necessarily the car you saw out on the autocross course living its life on a racetrack. But I gotta tell you, this thing is a joy to drive. So under here, one of the quickest giveaways that it's a RENNtech car is the fact that this little guy is black. Typically that is red on the Mercedes, and the RENNtech guys paint it black. It's just their thing. But otherwise, it's fairly unassuming, other than what looks to be a pretty beefy intake. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it's supposed to look like on the standard car, but it looks beefier to me. So anyway, let's take a look in the back, because this little two-seater actually has quite a bit of luggage room, despite the fact that its folding hardtop goes back here. So back here, you can see our hardtop. We're gonna go top down today, but you know, we still have room for a few bags, a few things. We've got a 6 CD changer, still reasonably luxurious. But what I find to be one of the strangest and maybe coolest features of this car is that RENNtech actually put in a little 4-point harness. So this is, you know, mounted to the floor down there, and then you plug this in up here, and then that would come around. I'm not gonna do this because I'm gonna mess it up, but that's okay. Either way, you're getting a 4-point harness in your RENNtech SLK, which I find to be very cool. This red leather, it's actually called Salsa, and it's two-tone. We've got the red on black, very gorgeous, and this lovely little 5-speed manual gearbox that we're gonna play with and row through today. So let's go see what a 4-cylinder RENNtech supercharged SLK can do on the street, and is this worth it in 2022.
But first, today's video is sponsored by Berry House Coffee Roasters. It's no surprise that my first passion in life is cars, but a close second is coffee. Berry House Coffee Roasters has been a family-owned business since 1934, handcrafted in New York, and when I took my first sip of this beautiful coffee, I knew this was a match made in heaven, and it's guilt-free because their fair trade organic coffees are ethically sourced, and they're a strong supporter of green initiatives and women-owned farms. Berry House knows their coffee, and it's no surprise that they're focused on high-quality, premium coffees that are distinct, well-balanced, and delicious when you brew your first cup. So do yourself a favor and make Berry House coffee part of your morning routine.
So let's get it started. We've got our Mercedes Blade key with our getaway car keychain. Love that. Jumps right to life, doesn't give you all of that tuner BS that you're used to when you sometimes go wild with these cars. RENNtech is the real deal. So anything RENNtech usually is very functional. Now inside, we've got these insane cup holders. Luckily, that's not an ashtray. We've got this beautiful carbon fiber shroud, which is cool for $19.99. I appreciate that. Reasonable storage space in here, cigarette lighter. And to put the top down, we use this button. We just pull it back, and that takes 25 seconds to get this hardtop convertible back in the rear. And I like this thing because inside it is pretty classy. You've got the quilted leather on the headliner. The 5-speed manual gearbox, pretty standard stuff, not a dogleg or anything, although to get it into reverse, the lockout is a lift up and over. So it's not a down, not a T-grip, up and over. Probably common for you Mercedes folks, but I grew up in BMW and Volkswagen land, so that's a little odd for me. Little stiff, nice light steering though. This has a real throaty kind of rumble to it. It does not disappoint. I know sometimes you hear, oh, it's not the inline six or a V6 or whatever. It's a 4-cylinder. But I've got to say, it actually delivers. And maybe it's because a lot of cars today have gone to, turbo 4-cylinders. So it's a little more familiar to have a supercharged 4-cylinder in this, but it does sound very unique. And that rear end with the limited slip differential puts the power down. It's not alarmingly fast, but you can certainly tell that this is far more torquey and performance oriented than Mercedes was going to go on the SLK 230. Fuel cut is only at about 5,800 RPM, so this is not a high revving little engine, but it puts it down the whole way through the rev range. Wasn't expecting it to be so eager. Like, it's actually pretty sporty. Like, it wants to go. It wants you to thrash it a bit. dare I say it's even over-braked. Like, I'm not really dipping into them that much just yet, but if you really needed all of them, this thing is going to stop hard, and it'll probably do repeated stops over and over again. From a tuner perspective, if I were to compare it to something, it reminds me a lot of that little Mark I GTI from Callaway, because that was a cohesive package. It felt together. It didn't feel like a tuner car, and I think that's what RENNtech does really well, is they churn out these kind of tuner cars, but they do feel like they could have come from the factory this way. I think they could have gone one little step further if they wanted to be really extreme with this car, which is to tighten up the gear ratios, to shorten maybe that 2-3-4. But then again, it's not fully necessary because the car has a lot of torque. So it does just fine. This modified exhaust is certainly a bit louder and rowdier than the standard car, but it's not really droning. I mean, I do have the top down, so it's not a totally fair assessment, because when it's up, who knows? But I mean, it definitely geared for speed, or at least a little bit of fuel efficiency. If only there were a sign that said not to do that. That this is supercharged and not turbocharged, because I get just such instant response, instant feedback, and I don't have to wait for this to spool up. It doesn't need some advanced turbo setup. So just going with an old school supercharger that does the job really makes this thing rewarding to drive, and it just feels like a much larger displacement engine than it even has been punched up to be. I like that the suspension is upgraded, but it's not brutal. These conies are stiff, but they're not so stiff that they're rattling my teeth out, because you still want a car that you want to drive. You know, we all dream of those beautiful mountain and canyon roads, but sometimes you gotta get to those roads too. And if you've got to drive out of the city or out of some, you know, crummy New England or Michigan roads, it's hard to select the stiff, miserable car. This is not that. It is competent, but it is balanced. Old school Hyundai Accent in a great green. I mean, people pay like 12 grand to get that green on their 911 today. This engine's so usable. This is like a really easy car to just drive anywhere. It's so approachable. Like, this is a car that you'd like want to drive or learn to drive a manual transmission on, because you don't need a whole lot of revs. You don't need to be too particular about anything. Hopefully we don't have to go head on with a Volvo. Okay. Usually not the car I expect to play chicken with, but all right. Volvo Wagons, the new Ultima. But yeah, the clutch is like, it's tactile, but it's not so sensitive. Transmission super easy to shift through. It's not like a ratchet vibe. It doesn't feel like a rifle bolt action, but you certainly get a satisfying ka-thunk into each gear. But you certainly know when you're in the next gear. This would be a really easy car to learn how to drive a manual on. You've got all this low down torque. You've got a fairly tactile but not obnoxiously grippy clutch. It allows for a bit of slip. And this gearbox, while it's pretty solid, it's not like a rifle bolt action or anything, but it's really defined where the gears are. There's a long enough throw. You never get lost in it. This thing is awesome. It's actually a pretty good little driver's car. I was not expecting to come away from this one glowing about the SLK, but you know, who knows? Maybe it's just because it's this RENNtech deal and it's beefed up a bit, but this is a good time. This is fun to drive. I enjoy it. I do. I actually really enjoy this car. So thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.